I want to welcome folks back to another Zoom conversation. And today we have a very special guest. We have Angela Stockwell, who has been the archivator here at the library since 1983. Welcome, Angie.
Thank you, Dr. Richards.
This is your life.
Okay.
So why don't you start off by telling the world your special announcement?
My special announcement is that tomorrow on September 30th, I will no longer be working at the library. Actually, October 1st, but my last official day is September 30th. I am retiring.
And when did you start at the library?
I started in March of 1983. The library was dedicated in August of 82. So a few months later, I started and worked with Margaret Chase Smith until she passed away. And then I remained at the library thereafter.
Why don't you tell people about your job interview?
My job interview actually was with Dr. James McCampbell, who had retired from the University of Maine. He was the director of the Fogler Library at that time. And he was the one who interviewed and talked to me about my typing and my shorthand and those kinds of things, and never mentioned that I would be working with Margaret Chase Smith. I thought I was going to be doing library work, loaning books, and that type of thing. However, on my first day at work, do you want me to go into that?
I do. We want stories. We got an hour to fill.
Okay. On my first day of work, I came in and Dr. McCampbell greeted me, and we were in his office. And where I am right now actually was separated by two different offices. The one I'm in presently, and then his office, which would have been through a door. And so I arrived, and he said to me, "You go in there," pointing to the door, "and she will be right in." And at that time, honest to God, David, I had no idea who she was. I cannot believe that I had no idea that he meant Margaret Chase Smith. So I went into the room, still a little bit befuddled, and I sat at a table, and pretty soon the kitchen door opened, which was attached to that room. And out walked a little gray-haired lady. And I just kind of looked at her, and my mind was certainly at that point was just running 1,000 miles an hour trying to think, who is this lady? And she came over to me, and then I realized very quickly that that was Margaret Chase Smith. I had thought all this time that the library was named for her and that she had already passed away. I had no idea she was still living. I never told her that story, thank God. But that is my first meeting with Margaret Chase Smith and my first day at the Margaret Chase Smith Library.
My recollection is it might not have been your first meeting with Margaret Chase Smith. Didn't you?
Well,
tell a story about growing up.
Well, I had grown up in a very, very small town.
Which
was, well, actually, my early years were in Hudson, Maine, and then later on it was in Bradford, Maine, 6 miles or so away. And I had gone to school at Old Town High School and then to Higgins Classical Institute, which was in Charleston. And when I graduated from Higgins, my principal at the time, who I actually worked for during the summer, suggested that I might want to go to Hudson College. So I did. I applied late and got in and started at Hudson and eventually joined a sorority, Epsilon Tau Epsilon, which is a part of Pi Rosetta International. And I was a very small town girl. Bangor was big city to me. It would be like someone going to New York City now, I imagine. And we had a sorority gathering at Pilot's Grill, which is now closed. And I went there and was quite taken by all of the lavish layout. I mean, there was fine silver and so many wonderful things going on. People were dressed to the nines, and it was just absolutely lovely. And we had a guest speaker. And the speaker as I look back on things now, was Margaret Chase Smith. At that time, I did not give a hoot. I was more interested in what was going on around me. And it wasn't until I was working with Senator Smith all those many years later, that was in the 60s. And here I am in 1983, 84, taking dictation from Margaret Chase Smith, who is dictating a letter to Clara Swan, who was one of the big, big administrative people at Hudson College, and also involved in our sorority. And she was writing a letter to her, and I'm thinking, well, I know who Clara Swan is. And then she made comment on a thing, how she had been there in 1966, or 65, whatever year it was. And I'm putting two and two together again. I think back now that I must have been very slow. But anyway, I finally realized that I was there. I was actually there. That was the event at Pilot's Grill, and I just really did not pay attention. I saw it in my mind now, can remember a little gray-haired lady speaking to us, but it went right over my head. I missed everything she had to say. And, you know, I can actually, I think, look back at that speech that's in our records here now and see what she had to say, but it's been all those years, obviously. So yes, that really was officially my first meeting of Margaret Chase Smith, although we never actually were introduced to one another.
So what I'm going to do now is do a share screen so we can see a picture of you and Margaret together. You see that?
Oh my, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good Lord, my hair is actually not gray. Isn't that interesting?
You have gray hair?
Heavens, no.
So why don't you explain to people this picture just from the standpoint of, you know, what your routine was when Senator Smith was alive?
Okay. Well, obviously she's dictating. She has little notes there you can see on the table. That isn't customarily where we normally would.
Is that somewhat of a posed photo?
Well, I think we probably did work there, but I remember we have worked there in the past, but usually we sat in her atrium. And that's kind of weird. What year is this, David? 93? Okay,
Yes.
so all right, that explains
So
it.
you're 10 years in at this point.
I'm 10 years in at that point. And so I would get in early in the morning, earlier than the rest of the staff. I would be here before 7, and she would be raring to go. She usually made notes on little slips of paper, people that had called her the evening before, and then she would dictate a letter to that person or persons. And I would then take the dictation, go and type the letters, bring them back to her, and then help her sign them. She had an eye problem, and so it was very useful to have staff people to assist her. And so that's primarily what I did on a day-to-day basis.
So tell people what December was like for you, a December with Margaret Chase Smith.
December as far as correspondences, you mean?
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy, crazy.
Why is that, Angie?
Well, let's see. It began actually in November. She would begin to get letters from constituents or friends or people who are interested in her starting in November around Thanksgiving. She'd get Thanksgiving cards, and then that would progress beyond there to December 14th, which is her birthday, and she'd get birthday cards, and then she would get Christmas cards, and maybe even occasionally New Year's cards, but hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mail came in during that period, and it was just crazy. I mean,
and what was her policy about
her
correspondence?
policy was to answer every single, I shall say damn at this point, letter.
Keep it clean. This is going over the air.
Every letter, every card with a letter, a complete letter to them. She never sent cards out. She always sent letters in response to cards. And so it was crazy. I mean, I can type only so fast, but good Lord, it was crazy. Yeah, hundreds. And I mean that quite literally, not just figuratively. So yeah, so busy time.
And so, I mean, you quite literally helped to create a lot of the collection here at the library.
Yes, we have a research table that is many feet long, and on the other side of that, as well as some other file cabinets, are all the correspondence, just general correspondence, not really official correspondence, during her time in Washington, although we have, file drawers and file drawers and file drawers that are filled with that kind of material. But yeah, a lot of correspondence.
You talked about you were the first one there in the morning. What was part of your routine in the morning?
Well, initially, I've told this story before, but initially I was very nervous because
Why is that, Angie?
because I was the first one here, and I always worried. I mean, she wasn't a young woman.
She would have been 80, 85, 86.
Yes, 85, 86 years old. And so my first thought as I came through the door at the library was that I would find Margaret Chase Smith dead. And what would I do? I used to worry about it so much. And I finally, after, 10 years or more, decided she was never going to die. And I was very grateful for that because I wouldn't have to worry about it. But the minute I came through the door at the library, I could smell burnt toast and coffee. And so I knew she was up and going and that she was ready to start her day. And so it worked out fine. I got over that fear. I never had to worry about it. So, and so when she passed, it was very hard. Losing her was like losing family. So.
So I'm drawing out stories that I've heard for the past 20. See, we've worked together for almost 24 years. So these are stories that I've heard time and again, in particular when school field trips come.
Right.
So you just mentioned the burnt toast. So now we have to play the game of what was her favorite sandwich?
David's asking this questions for anyone who's listening because when we have field trips here, the boys and girls, I usually do a little spiel about Senator Smith and the collection and what's here. And then I ask them if they have any questions. And if they are hesitant to start asking questions, I say, well, what do you think her favorite sandwich is? And then they all start guessing: tuna fish, peanut butter and jelly, all kinds of different things. And eventually they get to ham and cheese and turkey and cheese. And I say, well, there's a common denominator there. Do you know what a denominator is? And finally they figure out that it's a cheese sandwich. And then I tell them that it's not only a cheese sandwich, but a burnt cheese sandwich, that was what she liked. She would go downtown to what was at that time Whittem's restaurant, and she would order a burnt cheese sandwich. And if they brought it to her lightly toasted, she would send it back because she wanted it charcoaled, so to speak. So, the boys and girls always find that very interesting.
You mentioned your spiel.
My spiel.
We actually had you we filmed your spiel a couple of weeks ago. And it is on the Margaret Chase Smith Library website in the educational section. People can hear you. It's about 17 minutes long where you give your spiel.
Where I ramble on and on and on.
Yes. Where you keep the little kids amused and entertained. And talk about your favorite portrait of Margaret Chase Smith.
Yes, my favorite portrait.
Yes. I know you never tire of telling that story.
You make me tell it so many times. I mean, yes, hundreds and hundreds of times. So, yeah, one does get tired of doing the spiel, but it is part of what we do, and it works, and it's new children and who've not heard the spiel. But yet teachers, unfortunately, have heard the spiel many times, but every one of the children are equally as interested, when they come from the very first time that I ever did it. So it's fun to do.
You just mentioned a few moments ago that eventually Margaret Chase Smith did pass away in 1995. And how did that transition affect you? Because what people need to understand is that when you first started working at the library, you were Senator Smith's secretary. So that function goes away after she passes away. So what did your role become at that point?
Well, during the latter part of Senator Smith's life, obviously I worked very closely with her. And in the last, about a year before she passed away, she had fallen and struck her head. And things kind of changed a little bit then, her being able to remember some things and, that kind of changed. And so I pretty much sat with her and we went through the, I don't know, the duty, I guess, of answering her mail. But I pretty much knew what she would say to people. And so I kind of, typed the letters in that respect and then helped her sign them. She still continued to sign them. And it worked very, very well. But when she passed away, obviously I did not have that. I mean, I was responding to mail, but it was people addressing it to the library or to me as somebody about her passing. And so it was very different then. And then I would just, tell those people what an impact or how much she thought of them, or, I would try to respond in that way. So yeah, the collection continued to grow. And even during that time, all those years that I worked with her, I had started my 13th year. Even in those years, I continued to do library work. So it was just a continuation of that, actually. I remained and I continued to work with the collection, and I, helped the director at that time, who was Greg Gallant, and I worked with him if there was any research requests or whatever. And that's kind of what I do now. I handle requests from people all over the country or internationally who are interested in her career, and they need material to either write a book or an article, so that's what I do. So it was just a continuation of library work, actually.
So before we leave Margaret Chase Smith entirely, I know you have some amusing stories about traveling with Margaret Chase Smith.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I did travel some with her. One I remember in particular was a trip it was the AARP. I think it was it was a conference of some type. I can't remember exactly. But it was at the Cliff House in Ogunquit, Maine. And so she and I drove to Ogunquit in her Cadillac. And we got there, and she was well received, naturally. And we were spending the night. And so that was, a fun time, obviously. And they immediately all surrounded her. And so, as usual, I would just step back and let things happen as they happened. And as we were seated for the particular event that evening, they had seated me with Margaret Chase Smith and other dignitaries at the same table. And I try very hard not to be in that position. I preferred to sit somewhere else with the peons of the world. And so anyway, I was assigned that seat, so I sat there very quietly. And prior to the event, they had contacted the library and had asked us to send them our videotape, which we did. We sent them a copy of it. And up on the stage that they had the videotape, and it was up there to view, but there was no audio. For whatever reason, I don't know. And Senator Smith, God love her, volunteered quite graciously that Angie could certainly narrate that tape. And I was absolutely astounded and had to get up in front of 200 people and stand on that stage and look sideways at the screen and try to tell them what was shown on the tape as it was going. And I was never so embarrassed in my life. And anyway, I got through it, but I shall never forget it, ever. Anyway, the next morning after we had got ready to go, I inadvertently pushed I don't know if I told you this, David. I had inadvertently pushed on the key ring to her car. Had pushed the alarm button. And oh my God, the entire parking lot, and we were up relatively early, and everyone who was staying at the motel, it was just, blaring horn. And again, I'm trying to figure out how to shut that off. And anyway, those experiences are all kind of interesting. I'm trying to think if that was the same time that when I was with her, I think we had adjoining rooms. I'm not sure whether that was in Indianapolis when I traveled with her once. I think it was there, actually. And she had worn an outfit down, but had changed for the event. And she was in her room. We were adjoining rooms. And then she called to me and she said, "Mrs. Stockwell, I said, yes, Senator. And I went in, and she had her dress was caught up over her head, and she could not could not get out of it. And I just kind of chuckled, and she said, I seem to be having a problem. And I said, well, you are in a bit of a pickle. Anyway, I got her out of the dress and got it resituated so that she was fine. But just memories like that, just so vivid in my mind, time spent with her. I mean, she had a great sense of humor. She laughed that all off. I mean, it was fun times.
So you shared some recollections about Margaret Chase Smith. For people you meet anew who want to know about Margaret Chase Smith, what's sort of like your thumbnail description of her?
Oh my, that's an interesting question. Well, she was tough. I guess I always tell people that she was tough. She expected things to be done a certain way. She expected us, staff people, office people, to perform in a certain way. I have on my desk right now that you can't see a container.
Is it close enough that you can show people?
It's a Diet Pepsi. Heaven forbid. It's a Diet Pepsi. But in Margaret Chase Smith's day, I would not have a Diet Pepsi on my desk.
Apparently your new boss is a sluggard.
I would not have had a cup of coffee. I would not have had anything other than what I was supposed to be working with or on. And so times in that way, respect have changed. But I respected that. I mean, that was kind of how I was trained. So it was not, so many people, I go out in public today and I see young girls or young men who are working in public places with jeans on that are torn in the knees and whatever. No, we did not dress that way at the Margaret Chase Smith Library while you were dealing with Margaret Chase Smith. We had on dresses, we had on high heels, the whole schmick. So, it was very different, obviously. So I wear pants occasionally. In fact, I have slacks on today, but it's every time I wear them, I feel guilty. I feel like any minute Margaret Chase Smith is going to come out and chastise me.
That must be why she's scowling down from the wall at you.
Probably that's why, yes.
So your library work, you talked about researchers. Do you have some memorable research projects that you helped out with over the years?
Oh, David, I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah, but I said what's the most memorable? What excited you the most, interested you the most?
They all are interesting, but they're all different. I mean,
or even the researchers themselves, ones who stood out to you.
Right. I mean, I've had obviously elementary school children, high school students, authors of books, people writing articles, people getting their degrees, undergraduate, graduate degrees, doctoral candidates, all of those kinds of people are looking for information about Margaret Chase Smith. So it's been very interesting. I mean, I had a lady from California, I believe, who was here for close to a week, and she was studying about the 1940s and World War II and what was happening to children.
Okay. I believe wasn't she from Iowa?
I thought she was from Seattle. I can't remember. I'd have to look, I guess. But anyway, that's what her work was on, was, the children of World War II. Parents were going off to war, and who was taking care of the children. So that was an interesting study. And it's always interesting because, when people come here, especially younger people, college students, for instance, who want to learn about Margaret Chase Smith, but they can't. I mean, she had such a vast career that they haven't quite narrowed it down. And you have to do a lot of talking with them to really see what they're interested in and how they can kind of fine tune it rather than an overall general story about Margaret Chase Smith. I find that interesting. I had just this morning, actually, had a gentleman from a podcast company called Cadence 13. Have you ever heard of it? No. Have you?
Well, yes, because I got the email.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you followed it. Anyway, this gentleman is looking for Margaret Chase Smith's audio of her giving her Declaration of Conscience speech in 1950. And of course, there is nothing like that in 1950, but we do have a reenactment tape, an audio tape that we send to people. And so I sent him a link to that. I mean, that's the best I can do. But at the time she did that reenactment, she was well into her 80s. So it's not quite the same as doing it when she would have been 52 or 53 years old. So, but it's, you know, it's still a resource regardless. So.
That researcher is actually working with John Meacham, who's quite a well-known historian.
Yes, when I saw the name, I realized that, yes.
Mm-hmm. So lots of research requests over the years. Even it's 25 years since she passed away, but we still get lots of requests. This is one that just came in the past day or two.
Yes.
You had another one, just to give people a flavor. What was the other research request you were working on today?
This morning?
Yeah.
It was from a gentleman who actually was looking to see if we had anything on his grandfather. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, we went into the database and we did find his grandfather. And Kim, who's going to be helping researchers in the future, found some material and then scanned it. And then we sent it to the gentleman so that he could have that for his family records. One of the interesting things, a contact that I've had through the years is with a lady named Betty Coed, mm-hmm. who is a Senate historian in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. And Betty is very, very often contacting me to find material, sometimes for the visitor center that they have in Washington. And sometimes, I think she does maybe a presentation once a month or something to, I don't know, legislators. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. They have so much going on in Washington right now. It's hard to tell when she would find time. But when she sends, she always wants to know if I have a picture of this or if I have a picture of that, or people in particular, you know, colleagues that Senator Smith served with. So it's always fun to try to find those things. And I've always enjoyed that very much. Mm-hmm. I'll miss that.
Has she responded to your announcement?
Not that I've noticed yet. I've been going through quite a few of them actually.
You've been getting dozens and dozens.
Yes, I have. It's surprising to me.
Well, it shouldn't be. She's been one of your best customers, though.
She has been through the years, which is interesting because she's a Senate historian, and I thought probably they had everything mm-hmm. that anybody could possibly want. And so I didn't know what I could certainly offer, you know, from this collection, but apparently, you know, what mm-hmm. I've sent has been helpful to her. So
you mentioned when people have a research request, you go to the database. And I think you should talk about that because I think at this point you may have the distinction of being the last person in the world who knows how to use the database that we have. So tell people about that.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. It is actually, when I started here in '83, I was still typing on a IBM typewriter using carbon paper. And so in 1984, I think it was, we decided to go into the technology world. Mm-hmm. And a gentleman from Idaho, actually, who was a member of Northwood University, Northwood Institute at the time, had researched and found that there was a software program called Dayflow. And
was that Macaulay Whiting?
Yes.
And he was an official with Dow Chemical, right?
He was married to a lady she was Helen Dow Whiting, and yes, and he was also.
So he married into the Dow family.
Yes,
and the family that started the chemical.
He was also a part of the administration or the board or some such thing at Northwood Institute at the time, and so he had done some research and had decided that we needed that program. So we did. We started.
Let the world know what that program is.
It's called Dayflow.
Dayflow Tracker.
Dayflow Tracker, yeah. And it was based out of California, and it is non-existent today, except for the one at the Margaret Chase Smith Library. Mm-hmm. There is no technological backup, no support team, and it's ancient, but good golly, it works, and that's all we have. So we also have another program called Past Perfect, which is a museum software, which obviously is helpful. And I was just had a lady who hopefully is going to be working on it in my absence. And I told her in the Past Perfect software program, I had done a backup a few months ago before COVID struck. And we have 34,000 images in the collection. 34,000, David, imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And that not only includes photographs, but it includes images of salt and pepper shakers, or linens, or whatever else was owned by Margaret Chase Smith. So, so it's a huge collection. And the old database has lots of glitches, but still we're able to find material. So
that's the bottom line, is that you can still make it work. It still finds stuff. And you were telling this new person, who was actually a person who's worked for us before, Sherry Lee, that it doesn't matter if you have a screwy system, so long as you stick to the screwy system.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I've told people for years, in fact, people who have come to talk to me about the collection and how things are cataloged and how we decide what things are going into the files. And I have told them repeatedly, it doesn't matter where you put something. If I put David Richards, for instance, in a file on the Girl Scouts, it doesn't matter. As long as it's an indicator that says David Richards is in the Girl Scouts, then you can find it. And so if you have a finding aid like that, then you can do it regardless. He doesn't belong there. He should be somewhere else, but it works. So.
Well, I think you've defined the central function of an archivator. Actually, it's twofold. One is to organize, but it's organized with the goal of being able to find. And that's what we are able to do here, is we can find stuff, which that's basically the job you've been doing for the past 37 and a half years, is
that's right.
Organizing stuff so we can find stuff. And the bottom line is we can find stuff. To bring anyone in to try to understand how we find stuff is going to be mind-boggling.
It would definitely be mind-boggling, yes. It's set up very strangely. I have always wondered, how Dr. McCampbell and Senator Smith, at the time that the library became the library, how it actually was decided to do things in certain ways. And all these many years later, I have tried to think as Dr. McCampbell thought. And because that's, what I did when I first came here, was actually typing cards, library catalog cards. And, I would see where he would put things and wonder about it. But, I wasn't a librarian per se. So, I just took his word for it. But that's kind of how I've put things away ever since. So.
Well, before we leave one of your favorite topics, Dave Flo, I'll move on to your second favorite topic in terms of the museum collection. There was, a few years after you started using Dave Flo, there was a crash.
Oh,
and can you tell people that story of how you were able to get it up and running again?
Oh, it was awful. The sad part about that is still even today, everybody thinks that if they back things up, they are safe. Because they can go back and do a restore, and then everything goes back to hunky-dory. Unfortunately, we had been backing up. We'd backed up Dave Flo regularly, and then one day the whole system crashed, and we lost our entire database. But we said, that's okay, we've got a backup. But when we went to do the backup was not there. And it took, I don't know, weeks and weeks of trying to find somebody who could take that information and restore it back to what we had. And as I say, there's no tech support. At the time, there was somebody in, I don't remember what state now, who was able to maneuver somehow and get it back online for us. But Lordy, it was a scary time. And I thought, oh, please don't tell me that all these thousands and thousands and thousands of records are going to have to be re-entered. I thought, oh goodness, I have to kill myself if that's going to happen. So
I think the version of the story you told me, he was like a California surfer dude.
Yeah, and it wasn't anybody that, I think he used to work for maybe the people who had invented Dave Flo, I don't know, but he was it was not a pleasant experience. It was terrible, actually. So my advice to people who are doing backups, occasionally test them. Make sure there really is information on there, because that was very scary.
Well, Moore's law is that the power of computing doubles every year and a half. And so when you use that principle of the technology multiplying every year and a half, and you think about that we're using the same database that was installed 25 years ago.
Right.
We're talking dinosaur times in terms of technology.
Exactly.
But the bottom line is you've been able to make it work for 25 years.
Dinosaur times. No wonder I'm retiring. It is time.
Well, like I say, the bottom line is you've been able to keep it working all these years.
I've tried.
And the other thing I want to emphasize, though, is partly what is so impressive about the database is the amount of data that you have in it. Because you've gone through like every scrap of paper that we have in the collection. We always say 300,000 documents, and gone through every scrapbook, over 500 scrapbooks, and taken that information and put it into the database. So, you know, compared to—
I had to keep busy, David. It's 37 years.
I know, it's a lot of time to fill.
Yes.
So compared to a lot of collections, that we have a lot more intellectual control over the collection than many other places would be, because of what you've done for the past 37 years.
It's worked.
Yes. So your next favorite project after keeping Dayflow alive has been the photo project.
Oh, God. Lottie, I have hated that project from day one. I don't even know
Angie,
how
tell the world why you hate that project so much.
Oh, Lordy. Well, let's see. I am up to, starting with number 1, for instance, I am up to now 7,115 photos, bearing in mind that every number can have anywhere from 1 picture to, you know, anywhere from 50 to 100 pictures.
Yeah, so it's more accurate to say you have like 7,000 and something records.
Records.
Because what you just said is we have about 34,000 images.
Images, yes, exactly.
Yeah, we used to say 10,000. We used to like double just the number of records that we have, but it's more like 5-fold.
It is. It's surprising.
Because like some numbers, like there's one number for the Margaret Chase Smith Ferry, where there's like 400 pictures.
Yeah.
With
that one I
number.
hated most, the Margaret Chase Smith Ferry, because a few years ago, Richard Spear, who was the captain of the Margaret Chase Smith Ferry down in, well, it went to Final Haven, but I'm trying to think where does it go out? Lincolnville. It goes out of Lincolnville, Maine. And he had gone during the construction of the Margaret Chase Smith Ferry and brought back and donated to the library album after album after album of pictures of the construction of the ferry. And I mean, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photos of iron beams and, you know, barnacles stuck to the bottom of it. And I mean, in every single one of those, I scanned and added and added and added and added. Oh, Lordy, it was just unbelievable. And so that's the kind of thing. And as I have said before, when we've had people here in the past, that photo project was started originally back in the 1980s when I first came here by Reggie Collins, a dear soul. And he worked very, very hard. We have cards for every picture that he did. But Reggie didn't have the advantage of being able to go to a computer and look to see if we had the exact same picture as somewhere else. And so he didn't have that advantage. So he would assign a new number to an exact same picture, which might be a different number. And then we had other people who came in after Reggie was gone, and they worked on it. And then somebody else worked on it. And then Angie started working on it, and she made it probably 5 times as bad as it was. It's just been a horrible, horrible project. And but I think I'm toward the end of it now, and whoever comes after me, God love them. I wish them well.
So now we'll talk about your third favorite project, which has been editing the newsletter,
Oh, yes, my favorite job. Hmm.
which we're up to volume 36.
Right.
And you've been around for 37 and a half years. So you've done it for all the time I've been here, 24 years.
Yes, I have, but I didn't do it initially. I was not involved in that. So I think initially Dr. McCampbell did it, and then we had an assistant director here um, who was here, Margaret Chase. She worked on it, and so she used to do the newsletter. I don't know when it came to me. I have no idea, but uh, I've learned a lot. For those who are listening, by the way, the biggest burr in my side when I'm doing the newsletter is actually sitting to my left on this screen because he's such a perfectionist about editorial changes. And oh, goodness, in the early days, I would sit and give him a draft of what I had done. And then we would have to shut the doors between the halls and the offices because there was a lot of screaming going on. But, ultimately the newsletter got done and people seemed to receive it well. So whatever that gentleman did must have been right. So
I have two things to say. One is it took me a while to get you trained that things would go a lot more smoothly if you just make the changes that I asked for.
well, I thought I should have some input at least since I was the one doing all the work. But, anyway.
And the second thing I will say is that I did not volunteer for the duty. I mean, even to this day, you always give the newsletter to everybody and ask them to proof it.
Right.
So it wasn't like I just stuck my nose in it. I was invited to.
I prefer to think otherwise. But if you're under that delusion, fine.
Okay. Well, it's one of the things that I will miss the most is our time working together on the newsletter.
Yeah, and it really is, it's always a fun time, and I groan about it, but I really don't groan seriously. I mean, I just accept what you say now.
There you go. There you go. You finally came around.
Right. No sense arguing. You might as well put it in.
So you've mentioned some of your colleagues, Margaret Chase, Reggie Collins, Greg, me. Any other colleagues? And I don't want to make you try to remember everyone you've worked through.
I'm trying to think. Let's see. I first came here, Marie Connie was working, and Marie.
Which interestingly, you just in the most recent newsletter, you had something from a thank
her daughter.
Her daughter. Okay. Yeah.
Her daughter. Yes.
I wasn't even aware that she had worked here. So.
Well, I certainly didn't assume. We had, I think John, our museum assistant and state coordinator for National History Day, had actually worked with Kathy.
She's a teacher.
And she's a teacher, yes. And she had commented about receiving the newsletter and had said that her mother used to work here. And I thought, oh my goodness, I knew Marie. I worked very closely with her. Marie was actually more a librarian, and I was more a secretary. And so.
So did she come in with Jim McCampbell?
I'm not sure of how that process went. I assume yes, because she was already here when I came. So, but she wanted to do library stuff, and she didn't really want to take Margaret Chase Smith's dictation. That wasn't where her comfort level was. So she was very happy when someone was willing to come in and do that. And so it worked very well. So we shared the job, so to speak. She worked half the week and I worked the other half the week. And so that's kind of went until I came on full time when she decided to retire. I think her husband had finally retired and she was going to retire with him. So yeah, you never know. You never know who's going to show up. So there was Marie and Jim McCampbell, Marie, Reggie, and I.
And Willie.
And Willie was a caretaker. And
Joanne.
And we had, I'm sorry?
Joanne.
Yeah, and then as senators in House, we had girls before that. We had Doreen Goucher, we had a Heather Dibble, we had Pat Spinney, people who have kind of come and gone in different projects, Joanne Brown, Sister Joyce Mahaney, Georgia McCurley, who had come and spent time with Senator Smith and then eventually became caregivers toward the very end. Greg Gallant, Lynette King, John Taylor, obviously, David Richards. I'm trying to think, Sherry Lehan. Gracious, so many people, that have passed through these doors and worked here at the library. And probably many of them, or at one time we were up to eight employees, so to speak. And then eventually, because of budget cuts and downsizing, we downsized some. And so now there's only 4 of us plus a part-time caretaker. So,
and as of Thursday, there'll be
3 plus a
caretaker. 3 plus a temporary replacement. It's going to take us a while to fill your shoes. It's going to take us
I appreciate that.
months.
But Senator Smith used to say, David, and I've told you this, no one's irreplaceable.
Angie, what did she used to say?
She used to tell me, and I had it written down for many, many years, that in fact, I took my vacation time around this statement, that if she could get along with someone, get along without a person for a week, she could get along without them forever. So I took that quite to heart. And so I always took my vacation days that were coming to me in day increments. I would take a Friday off or a Monday off or whatever. And I did not want to upset the apple cart with Margaret Chase Smith to make sure that I did not have a job if I took a whole week off. So yeah, that's kind of how it works. So that's what I did. And I didn't take a full week off until after she actually passed away.
I did not realize that.
I don't think I did. It was very, very, I might take 2 or 3 days at a time, but.
What that reminded me of, tell people about the trips that you used to take with your amigas.
Oh, I was trying to think what you were talking about. After Senator Smith passed away, we had use of her Cadillac, which was quite nice. And Sister Joyce Mahaney, who was a caregiver and a friend of Senator Smith and mine, and Georgia McCurley, retired naval captain from Chicago, who, by the way, for anyone who's interested, is 101 years old. And
still going strong.
Wonderful lady. She's in California. And so Georgia used to come, and Joanne Brown. And so Joanne, Sister Joyce, Georgia, and I used to take a memory trip in honor of Margaret Chase Smith every summer. Georgia would fly in from California, and Sister would come up from Standish. And there was I, and then Joanne Brown, who lives in a town nearby in Norwich Walk. They would come, and we would go on a little weekend or a few days off and travel. We'd been to New Hampshire, we'd been to Bar Harbor, Maine, we had been to, I'm trying to think, Greenville, Maine, different places, and we would stay and spend time together because we had spent so much time together with Margaret Chase Smith when she was alive. So it was a kind of a memoriam trip. So.
You had mentioned when we first started about working with school groups. Any funny stories you want to share about working with school groups?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I remember it may have been, no, I'm trying to think if it was from my hometown, but I don't think it was. We had a teacher who called us. They were coming for a field trip, and they were going to be visiting here, and they had called prior to coming and had said that they had a student in their class who was difficult, to say the least, and that we should be prepared for a misbehaving child. And so, we didn't think too much about it, except we were kind of, aware of it. And so the group arrived, the children came in and they were doing their tour. And I swear to God, David, I could not have told you which child was, the naughty one. They were all so well behaved, and I could not have told you. And so it just goes to show that sometimes children can surprise you in whether they actually are naughty or not naughty. But
well, I've been here for 24 years, and we usually get between 50 and 75 school groups a year. So that's between 12 and 1,500 school groups.
Right.
And that's just in my time. That's not even going back to your time.
Right.
And in that time, I can count on one hand the number of times we've had an issue.
Right. They really.
There's actually been a couple of times when a teacher or a principal has called me and apologize for the way their kids behave. And I say, what are you talking about? You know, they were just kids.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I can only think of maybe one or two incidences where someone had done something naughty.
You're right.
Other than just being normal kids.
Right. They're all excited. They're pleased to be here.
Usually on their best behavior. They understand that.
Yeah, they've probably been threatened with their life, but you know, they still are very, very good. And it's always interesting to see the questions that they ask. And I have found through the years that depending on the age is when you get to have any kind of a give and take of conversation with these kids, because when they get to be in middle school age, they stop asking questions because they're embarrassed that they're going to ask something that's stupid and the kids are going to laugh or whatever. Kids in the 3rd and 4th grade, they don't care.
They ask anything.
They'll ask anything. And, you know, that is fun. Yeah. And even
keeps you on your toes.
Yes. Yeah. Even college students who come here and do tours as part of their curriculum at whatever university or college they're at, you know, they still acquire. It's very hard to find young people of a certain age who will actually interact with you while you're doing the tours. You have to practically pull it out of them. But yeah, it's all been interesting and it's been fun. And so I'll miss that part of it.
So the last part of your responsibilities that I want to talk about, it really isn't a responsibility. It's something you sort of just took on your own, was the book group. And I neglected to do one thing, and I'm going to try to do this because partly it'll show people what you've been doing over the past 37 years that I'll be able to do this. I'm going to go to share screen, and I'm going to try to find a photo from the Age of Innocence.
Oh, I love that one.
So as I do that, can you just sort of talk through what you started doing with the book group?
Okay. David does a book group through the Maine Humanities Council, and so we would have, you gotta have a different one up there, David.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to. You talk. It's gonna take me some time.
Anyway, he does that, and so they pick books for a particular genre or whatever. And so we were doing the Age of Innocence, which was based back in the Gilded Age, so to speak. And so I decided that when David's favorite refreshment for people is poppy seed muffins from Hannaford Brothers, and I decided that it would be nice.
Well, hold it. Time out. No, that's not true. My favorite is the mixed. That you get a package that has the lemon poppy, the blueberry, and the chocolate chip. That's my favorite.
Pardon me. Anyway, I decided that if we were going to have refreshments, that they should be very interesting. So every time that we would read a book, I would be looking for the foods that were mentioned in the books. And I decided that I would choose from that selection of foods that were mentioned, and I would make them. And then I would bring them and have them for refreshments when the folks arrived. And so through the years, it has been so interesting. And the one that David was just talking about was the Age of Innocence. And I guess he can't find the picture.
Well, so the person who cataloged it didn't call it the Age of Innocence.
No, it probably isn't.
What do you think you might have called it?
Just book series, I guess.
Well, the problem with that is going to turn up every one.
Yes, all kinds of them. Yes. I'm trying to think how you could find it more quickly. Off the top of my head, I can't. But anyway, for those of you who don't know, so Angie went all out. I decided that we were going to have in the seminar room a fancy sit-down type.
Ta-da!
Did you find it?
Do you see it?
Not yet.
Oh, well, it's on my screen. I don't know why it's not on your screen.
Maybe can you get rid of that one and then see if it pops up?
Okay, yeah, let's do this, and then we'll do this. Now do you see it?
Yes.
All right.
Oh, I loved it.
Don't you like it when a plan works?
Oh, I do. It was so much fun. I decided that I was going to take whatever I had at home for dinnerware that had gold on it, because this was the Gilded Age. And so all of the plates that you see and the charger plates that I had gold around them. And then I had fancy wine glasses that you see there, and candles and candelabra type things, and even got roses. You see those are yellow roses there. And on, like down at the end of that picture, you see the napkin that's there. Those are lily of the valley, and the book actually mentions lilies of the valley.
Yes, because apparently in the Gilded Age, flowers are very symbolic. Each flower meant
Okay.
something special.
So I was trying to decide, you know, what, and Lynn helped me set this up. We had the linen tablecloths and the dishes and whatever, and the candles and whatever. And I was trying to decide, what will I have to serve? What, you know, what food will I have? And I had a cucumber type sandwich.
That's what the white things on the plates are. See if I can
Right,
get
this
the
is a
arrow
little
right
sandwich.
there.
It's a cucumber fancy sandwich, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had grapes.
Yeah, grapes.
Fruit. And then I had, I'm trying to think, what else did I have, David? Do you remember?
I don't. That was 5 years ago.
I think in between, next to the sandwich where you just pointed to, I think it was mousse, and I had made like a chocolate pudding mousse type thing. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But it was so much fun. Lynn King helped me set that up. And so what we did this time, where we usually have the refreshments when guests or the readers arrive, it's out in the main library. And this was in our seminar room, which is now named the Henry Room. And we kept the doors closed. And then I lit the candles, and then David let everybody in all at once afterward. And so they were all very, very surprised, regular readers. And it was so much fun. But I can tell you, after that experience, carting all of that material from Athens, Maine, and preparing the food and making sure that it was going to be fine was a monumental task. And I am definitely not going to ever be a caterer. And I can certainly admire the Heritage House, who does the catering here at the library for us, because Sherry and her crew are remarkable. And the work that goes into it is just absolutely amazing. And so I will not be pursuing that career once I'm in retirement, trust me.
But the issue was you did such a stellar job that you then created a tradition that we began having refreshments based upon what was in the books we were reading.
Right.
But you set the bar so very high with your first attempt that you
Well, it's gone downhill since then, David, I can assure you.
Now because of the pandemic, we're to the point of bring your own refreshments.
I'm trying to think of what was the name of the book? They had a goosey soup.
The center, I think it's The Center Cannot Hold.
Oh gosh, I can't remember, but it was
Nigeria. It's by
in Nigeria.
Chinua Achebe.
You're right. I forget the name of it, but so I had looked up Norwegian food recipes. And
Nigerian.
What did I just say?
Norwegian.
Okay, Nigerian foods, and I came up with a goosey soup, and I thought, that's an interesting name. Anyway, I looked at the ingredients, and it didn't look that difficult to make, and it really wasn't, and it was quite delicious, actually. I made it later for my family at home, and it was very, very good, and it was delicious, and, you know, I would make it again. And oddly enough, I was watching this is kind of an aside, but there's a show, half-hour comedy called Bob Loves the Abishola, which is on Channel 5. And on the show, there are some Nigerian ladies who are nurses, and one of them was pursuing a gentleman, and she had made a goosey soup for him. And I thought, oh my goodness, I know how to make a goosey soup. So I still have the recipe at home. Yeah, those times have been fun, but.
Well, we're getting close to the end, and I've got to wrap this up because you got to get off to lunch so you can be back in time for your next interview.
Yes.
So that you can be on WABI News tonight. So what will you miss about leaving the Margaret Chase Smith Library?
I will miss my interaction with my colleagues, obviously. Lynn deserted us a year ago, so now I'll be deserting you folks. I'll miss all of you, clearly. I miss particularly, you know, doing a search this morning for information for researchers. That has really been a highlight of my time here, and I will miss that very, very much. you know, when you interact with people like that, back and forth emails, sending stuff, sending attachments, you kind of get to know them, and that's always fun. And I enjoy that very, very much. So I'll miss that. I'll miss, you know, bantering back and forth with David Richards. You know, he can be very difficult at times, but you know, I've learned to tolerate him. I just will miss everybody. You know, I'll miss, you know, my time here completely. And, you know, I've missed Margaret Chase Smith now for over 20 years. So I miss that kind of person that she was. And I'm sorry that more people never got to really know her. I feel badly when students come here and they're just hearing about her, but they don't have a chance to really interact, because in the early days, she sat with them and answered their questions. And so that was always fun. So anywho.
What won't you miss?
What won't I miss? Getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and heading out in 20 below zero weather to drive to the Margaret Chase Smith Library so I can start another day. That I will not miss.
From the edge of nothing.
From the edge of nothing.
Yeah.
Yes, during this whole coronavirus things, folks, I have been functioning from home since we were closed to the public without a computer, because I am, quote, on the edge of nothing. And that was a quote that came from providers, 5 different providers I tried to get to come and give me, where I live, some kind of computer coverage or internet coverage. And finally found one, and then they pulled out later on. And so, you know, it was a hassle. So I worked all those months from March until just recently using my phone. And it was not fun, I can assure you. But anyway, those days are going to be done. And so thank you all. Thank you all. And I do hope that people who are listening will come to the library. It's a great place. And the people who are here will be able to show you some of what we have.
We can show you where Angie worked.
Yes. I want there to be a monument somewhere, you know.
What do you have planned for retirement?
Well, you have told me that I can't sit in my recliner and watch TV all day and pat the doodle, the name of my cat. So I originally had planned to maybe volunteer at the local hospital, but COVID still is in the air, so that's not going to happen for a while. So right now I don't have any particular plans, but I'm sure I'll find something to keep me busy. I love to mow lawn, and so I can still continue to do that until snow flies. So we'll see. That's about the most that I have planned.
Do you have any memory trips planned?
No, nothing like that. Okay. Can't go anywhere. What are you going to do?
You can go to Greenville.
This is true. Greenville is always nice.
Well, Angie, any final parting words that you have?
No, it's been, you know, I used to tell people, and I still continue to tell people, that I have been here for 37 and a half years. And it has been, quote, the best years of my life. And it has been the best job I ever had. And so I've loved every minute of it. And thank you all.
Well, thank you very much for your long and loyal service, both to Margaret Chase Smith and the Margaret Chase Smith Library. You will be missed. You won't be replaced. There'll never be another Angie. But on the other hand, like you said, we all do get replaced because we have to get replaced.
I know.
There'll never be another Angie. So
it would be nice, David, if you cried just a little bit. Could you get a tear to come down here?
Here. My Kleenex is right nearby.
Okay. Thank you, David.
You're welcome. Thank you for taking the time. And I'm going to let you go because I know you need to get to lunch and get to your next interview. Enjoy retirement. You've earned it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.